We are here, Backstage View. I'm Scott Wilkins. We're here with Chris Luquette. I know him as Frank Sullivan's bandmate in Dirty Kitchen, and seen him so many times. And we're here at Gray Fox. And Chris, excellent to see you.
Hey, great to be here, Scott. Thanks for having me, man. We survived a little bit of rain today, but you know, Gray Foxers they're a hardcore bunch. They won't let anything stop them. You know, so we've been having a good time already today. It's perfect. This is great.
That's true. I remember last year, I think you're running around without the band, just having fun.
Yeah, I've done a few little solo things in the last year. Not a lot, but a couple of things. Doing some freelance work. A lot of stuff up around New York City, some stuff in Boston, you know, just to fill in a couple of the gaps. Dirty Kitchen does 65, 70 some odd shows a year spread out, so, you know, we get a fair amount of work, and so it's been fun to just try and get some more stuff in there. And through some of those solo performances, I've been kind of working on singing a few more songs, and ended up with enough material to put a solo record, looking at a 2018 release on that. So
and
just
you're
developing
performing here you're doing grassroots stage.
Yeah, we've got the I think the Creekside stage going on at 7 on Friday at the Gray Fox, and so that's billed as Chris Luquette and Friends. And somebody asked me about it today, and I said, well, I guess I better make some friends.
You better make some friends.
But no, it's going to be a fun thing. I was really honored to be able to put that together. So Dirty Kitchen's got 2 sets Saturday. But yeah, we got Chris Luquette and Friends. I've got a couple of friends, Larry Cook and Rick Snell are coming up from New York City to play some stuff with me. Tony Watt, who's a great educator and guitar player from Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I see him a lot. I see him around. As a matter of fact, I believe he just got married.
He sure did, and I missed it because I had a gig. But I'm going to give him enough. I'm going to give him and his wife Laura some love and some
love. Yeah, and you're out west. Normally, that's home, right?
Well, I'm actually a classic homeless road musician at the moment.
Oh,
but I'm native. I'm native to Seattle, Washington originally, is where I'm from, and I get back there as much as I can. I grew up going to a festival called Wintergrass once I got into bluegrass, and so I have a lot of connections there. But you know, mostly East Coast. Frank Sullivan, my band leader, lives in Washington D.C. area. Mike Munford, banjo player, lives in Pennsylvania, close to there, and Jeremy Middleton, our bass player, is in Nashville. So I'm kind of like in between those three, kind of moving around, playing wherever people ask me, you know. And if I'm in D.C. and somebody asks me to play in New York, I'll drive up and play up there. And if I'm near Nashville hanging out with Jeremy, I'll play around there, or whatever, you know. And then do Dirty Kitchen stuff as well.
How did it begin? You were at home one day and. Because I heard Frank say often, every time I think, when he introduces you, he says you also play mandolin, but he doesn't let you play because that's his instrument.
Exactly, yeah, that's his instrument. Yeah, so I started playing, I'd been playing guitar about 6 years or so, and in a kind of a roundabout way, got into bluegrass, was getting way into folk music and such, and got a cheap mandolin and a cheap banjo, and started learning, and now I'm mostly guitar in the band in Dirty Kitchen, play some mandolin mostly, do some gigs here and there on mandolin, and banjo's kind of fallen behind a little bit. I like to mess around with Mike Munford sometimes and pick his brain sometimes. But yeah, so guitar and mandolin a lot. I grew up, when I was first learning guitar, I played a lot of bass too, so I do some bass stuff.
Was this in high school?
I started playing guitar when I was about 10, so a little bit before that. I grew up actually homeschooling, so I had a lot of time to sort of devour music and to get into it, which allowed for that. And my parents love music, and but kind of growing up, there was a guitar in the household from my mom's high school years, so I kind of messed around on that a little bit. But I was really the first one in my immediate family to get into music and performing it. And so got into guitar about 10 and studied some rock and roll and jazz and blues and some country music. And it was through some of my favorite rock and roll bands, country bands. They always seem to have like a bluegrass side or a folk side. You know, maybe they'd come out with a record. Like I remember the first time I heard the third Led Zeppelin record. It was like these really great heavy blues albums. And then they come out with like this kind of folk bluegrass, you know, there's some banjo tracks in there and some mandolin tracks, and like, you know, kind of opened my ears and my eyes a little bit to new styles of music. And then getting into bluegrass, I had a really heavy Grateful Dead period, and was devouring their music, and I was reading a book about them one day, and there's interviews with bandmates, and they were talking about whenever they weren't playing, they were listening to bluegrass records or Bill Monroe records. And I remember going, ooh, okay, I got to check out Bill Monroe. And I grew up in King County, Washington, just south of Seattle. And the great local library system had a great collection of Bill Monroe records. And as fate would have it, I stumbled on a live at the Newport Folk Festival, 1963. The Monroe the Bluegrass Boys at that point. Bill Keith was playing banjo.
Wow.
Del McCurry was playing guitar. There was about a magical 6-month period where those guys were in that band. And I just remember, I listened to it. No joke, I listened to it on the way up to Gray Fox because I know Bill
really?
Keith has a great, this year, I know Bill Keith had a big presence over the years here. And I just wanted to hear that again and remind myself.
The stage that you're going to he was always there.
Yeah, that Creekside stage. He was camped nearby with the teepee, you know. And I was really fortunate to, as I was learning to play bluegrass, that I actually became friends with Bill through
that's great.
Through a banjo camp near Seattle that he would taught at. And you know, so then I came, fast forward a few years, came to Gray Fox for the first time to play with Dirty Kitchen in 2012, and was able to connect with Bill Keith then, and it was really great, you know. So just by getting into bluegrass, you know, by accident, and really loving that lightning in a bottle kind of sound, really.
Did you have private teachers, or were you teaching yourself?
Yeah, so when I first started, first 5 or so years, I had 2 different instructors, and the first one, named Robert, really helped me just get, you know, how to hold the guitar, play a G chord, and we did some kind of like classical guitar technique stuff. And then, you know, he was the one who really opened the instrument to me, and so I was able to do that. And then he took a new job, moved out of the area, and I started studying with a fellow named Josh. And Josh was that perfect mentor that got me into music and like really expanded past the technique and got me, you know, opened my head to what the guitar could do. And so through Josh, I was taking some lessons for a couple months from him. He hands me Out of the Blue. He says, here, check this out. This is Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. And he said, I think you might like this because we're studying improvisation.
Yeah.
And so that opened jazz, and then we started talking about country guitar. And then he was saying, well, you know, check out some bluegrass stuff and check out Grateful Dead or whatever, you know. And so I had lessons for that first few years.
Do you still see them every now and again?
I stay in touch with Josh. I've sent one email to Robert, but kind of lost touch with him. But my friend Josh, who now teaches in Bakersfield, California, so I stay in touch with him. And every time we have a new record come out, I send him a copy. You know,
That's
hey,
great.
look at what we're up to. You know?
Yeah, that's cool.
But through those guys. But then Josh moved, when I was about 15, Josh moved to Germany and played with some musicians there. And so I was without a teacher. But after that first 5 years of getting going, I was it was perfect time. Like, I'm forever grateful to the mentors that I had, because they set me up at a perfect spot to start teaching myself and to get me just to listen to music and listen to it and enjoy it. And the more you listen, the more you want to listen, and the more bands you find out about, the more there are to find out about, you know.
What was the first big break that got you into being a pro?
Well, I would probably say like the first bluegrass jam that I was ever at. I was learning mandolin, like had about a month of mandolin and banjo under my belt, and I found a bluegrass jam. And my mother took me down to a senior center where they had this bluegrass jam happen. And within 5, I still have friends to this day that I met at that very first jam circle that I got in. And it was something about that acoustic vibe where you can just sit down and play an acoustic instrument with other people, and instantly you're making great music and connections. And that was so fundamental and so formative to me. And it just opened my mind. And at the end of that first jam, they had an open mic kind of out in the common area.
Right. And
some friends that I was jamming with said, you got to come play with us. You got to come jam. And I said, okay, on stage? Really? I've been playing mandolin, like, whatever. So I just bit the bullet, got on stage, and really haven't stopped. And it just, like, that led to the next thing. Like, that gig, I'd play that open mic every month for a year or so. Got offered a gig with a band that would play at like senior centers, you know.
Right.
And so I'd always get really excited to play this, and one thing led to another, meet more people. And right around 2008, we did that with some people for about 2 years. About 2007, 2008, I joined a band with my friend Al Price, who works with Neckville Banjos, and he got me a gig, and so we started playing coffee shop. You know, just keep going up the ladder, coffee shops and libraries. And then late 2008, I started a band called Northern Departure that I was in for 3 years, and we traveled a lot around the West Coast.
Were you the singer?
No, the main singer in that band, I sang a couple of songs, but the main lead singer in that band is named Nick Dumas, who plays mandolin with Special Consensus now.
Oh, wow.
He's been in that band for about a year. So him and I.
Was he also from Seattle area?
Yeah. Yeah. I was from the south side of Seattle. My friend Nick was from north side, and so we'd get together at his house and we had great times, you know. And so I met him, and I met some other young musicians, and then they started showing me, you know, because the first few years I was listening to a lot of those Monroe recordings and Flat and Scruggs, and then, you know, and then I I started hanging out with these younger guys, and then they were like, well, check out Adam Steffi and check out Scott Vestal and this new age of players, and that kind of expanded my head more. So the band Northern Departure I had was kind of that more contemporary sound of bluegrass, you know, which, you know, a little quicker tempos, a little higher keys. I was getting more used to that. And that band, I was really excited when we started playing bigger festivals. The big break that kind of got us all fired up was we were invited to play the Father's Day Festival that the California Bluegrass Association puts on, you know, and that was the first time we walked out on stage for our sound check right before we started to play. And you look out and you see 2,000 people, and you just look at each other and you go, well, we're either going to sink or swim, you know, and we swam, you know, as best as we could. And it was right towards the end of that band. So myself and Nick went on to play in other traveling bands, Dirty Kitchen, Special Consensus, and the other two guys started getting more into work. I know they like cars.
How'd you get into Dirty Kitchen?
Yeah, and so right as Northern Departure was starting to slow down a little bit, I was hanging out with Frank Sullivan II at Wintergrass. I met him, jammed, and we had a great time together, and you could just feel this instant connection, you know. And I met his dad, Frank Sullivan I, at the Father's Day Festival, and he encouraged me to meet more people and such. And so hanging out over the years with his son, Frank Sullivan II, and so Frank Sullivan had Dirty Kitchen going on, and I met Frank in 2011 at Wintergrass, and then reconnected with him at IBMA in 2011 when it was in Nashville, Tennessee, and we jammed all night long, and it was just like, this is great. And just as it worked out later in 2011, they had already had Dirty Kitchen going about 3 years. Their guitar player at the time, Lincoln Myers, he retired from the band, and I got a call one day from Frank. He said, hey, you want to come fill in? I said, sure, where at? And he said, well, it's in this coming January in Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Alaska in January. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Sounds like a great gig.
But it turned out great. I mean, it was really, that first 2 weeks on the road with those guys traveling the state of Alaska was incredible. It was super fun. And had a wonderful time, and at the end of that tour, he asked if I'd play the rest of the year, and we haven't stopped. And this is, I guess, technically calendar year 5, but 6 years of tour, and you know, festival seasons.
Now you have your own project. Is this your first solo project?
Yeah. So in the last year, at the end of 2016, I was able to get into a studio with a man who named Frank Marchand, who's the engineer who owns a studio near Baltimore, and he ran front of house sound with Dirty Kitchen for a year back in 2014. And I knew early on in the band that I was making these great connections with people and other musicians, and it was starting to get in my head that I, you know, would love to make a record. And we started playing some tunes that would maybe feature me on guitar, and people would come up after the show, hey, when are you gonna have your record out? And you know, it's like, it's hard to do a solo record, so it kind of was put off for a couple of years, but I finally was like, it's got to happen. So at the end of 2016, we did the sessions, and as we do this interview right now, it's like in that whole development phase of getting either labels going and artwork going and all that. So we're trying to search for.
How do you decide, like, before you go into the studio, like, do you have all the songs ready at that point, and does the producer or the other, whoever else is around, do they influence you enough that whatever you started with might have like kind of evolved in the studio?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. For this record, because there was at least 2 or 3 years I'd been thinking about it, there were a couple of tracks that I knew I wanted to do. So I spent, and luckily, so before I did my own record, I played on made 2 albums with Dirty Kitchen, On the Edge and Cold Spell, and then Frank did another solo album that heavily featured Dirty Kitchen, Family, Friends, and Heroes. So I'd been in 3 professional studio settings, and I'd made 2 records in a home studio situation with my former band, Northern Departure. So I'd done quite a few recording projects, you know, and so I kind of knew what that was like. And the biggest thing I knew was that clock is running. You know, you got a lot of people that are putting time out of their day and such, so you want to be as prepared as you can be.
Yeah.
So I made sure before we got there that I had all the songs arranged, or you know, as arranged. But you also know from experience that things change in the studio.
Sure. Yeah.
People get in there, you get behind microphones, you start playing, and people have ideas.
Yeah.
And so it's good to have a basis of the tune, the song you want to do. And so I had all the songs picked out that I wanted to play, and I wanted to put a cool band together. And I wanted it to be, because I have so many diverse influences and I listen to so much different type of music, I knew I wanted to get different types of music in there to flavor the bluegrass and the acoustic stuff that I play, but I didn't want to go too crazy. So I picked out some musicians that I knew could handle it and could go wherever the music was going to go. So I played guitar and mandolin. Mike Munford from our band played banjo, one of my favorite players and the nicest guy you could ever ask for. And then Patrick McAvenue played fiddle, and Dan Eubanks played bass, who plays bass with Special Consensus. And that was the core band. And I had a few, I'm really happy, this is kind of the first announcement, is that Dudley Cannell was able to sing a vocal track with me from the Seldom Scene.
Wow.
I got to sing a harmony track with him, which was great.
Where was the recorded?
A studio just kind of right between D.C. and Baltimore.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So right in Maryland, suburban Maryland. My friend Frank Marchand was the engineer.
You've been in as a player, but now taking this other seat.
Yeah.
Was it
to be a band leader? Yeah.
More difficult than you expected, or was it surprising? Or
you know, it was. I feel good about it. It was definitely. It's always more difficult. It's to have that, to realize when we get in there that the musicians show up and they kind of just look at you right in the face and they go, "What do you want to do?" And you go, "Oh yeah, this is,
it's all you.
It's all on me." You know. Luckily, you know, I mentioned that a minute ago or so that, you know, I'd been in the studio a few times and seen how Frank Sullivan conducted himself as a band leader.
Right.
And to be in this band Dirty Kitchen as a full-time member has been an immense education in the music industry. So how that influenced my project was that it was great. My eyes have been pretty open to what it's like. We did the first couple to record a record. We did the first record with Dirty Kitchen in Brent Truitt's studio, who plays mandolin with the Steel Drivers, and he's a legendary acoustic and Nashville producer and recording engineer.
Right.
And so that first record we did with him, I was just sitting there trying to just eat it up and see what it was like to do that, you know, and to be in that scenario of what it takes to arrange and to record and to be patient with red lights. You know, it's like as soon as you hit that record button, it's a whole new world. You know, to be on a stage in front of 4,000 people, whatever, it's one thing. You know, it's live and you're in the moment. And in the studio, the moment can be redone more and more. But the more you do it, sometimes the less passion is in there, and you know, so much.
So when is it due to come out?
Right now, there's no firm release date, but most likely early 2018. You know, to kind of set up the year.
So how could people stay in touch to see what's going on?
My website is my name, chrisluquette.com, and then, of course, dirtykitchenband.com. And if you're into Facebook, all the Facebook pages for me and Dirty Kitchen will have.
How do you spell your last name for those that want to know?
Luquette is Luquuette. Yeah, Cajun French for those of you wondering. My grandfather was born in rural Louisiana.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Do you want to play a little mandolin, a little quick number? Right?
Sure.
You want to just go?
Look at this Eastman, man. My buddy Tim Finch, who works with Eastman, he's gonna see me playing this.
Good.
Let's see what comes to mind here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for talking to us. We'll look for the new album.
Yeah.
And does it have a name?
The album does not have a formal name yet, but Chris Luquette's first solo album. Definitely want to come up with something cool to describe it, you know.
Right.
And it's mostly instrumental. I sang 3 tunes, sang a song with Dudley Connell and Danny Booth, and sang a song with Dan Eubanks, and then a lot of instrumental
Danny
stuff.
Booth is
Danny
the
Booth,
old
the former
player.
bass player in Dirty Kitchen, sang a high tenor part on a tune. Actually, we covered a Crosby, Stills, Nash song that I think people will really dig, and we did it trio bluegrass style.
So he left Alaska.
He's still in Alaska. That was the one wild card recording we did. We recorded the whole song in Maryland and then emailed, thank you technology, emailed the track to Alaska, and he recorded a tenor part.
Oh, wow.
There. Yeah, our former bass player moved
That's
back to his native
cool.
home. Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, and so there's stuff, and I actually was able to even play a couple of tracks electric, guitars things, you know. So
all right, well, we'll keep looking for you.
You got it.
Thanks
man.
so much, man.
We'll see you out there. Thanks,
Alrighty.
Scott. Appreciate you. Thanks.
All right.